Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Factory Must Grow, Episode 1. I'm your host, Krydania, and joining us on the line today is none other than Twitch Chat. That's right, it's your favorite internet friends. In the future, we'll have live guests, including other content creators and hopefully some game designers and other people in the community. But as the first episode, we've got Twitch Chat joining us, and we're going to talk a little bit today about what this podcast is, why it exists, who I am, and then hopefully we'll get to some Factorio Friday Facts from the recent weeks and discuss some of the implications of those. Before all that, though, I want to get into our mod spotlight of the week. This is going to be a weekly segment, and it will usually be Factorio mods, but it can include mods from other games in the genre as well. So I think it's a great segment to start off with, and Factorio is home to over 8,000 mods. I looked it up. It's an insane amount. Everything from super basic stuff like inventory size increasing or lamp radius increases, all the way to completely overhauling the game into something that barely resembles Factorio anymore, like Pinedons. But this week, as it's the first mod spotlight, I think I would be remiss if I didn't include probably the most talked about mod when people make lists of their favorite mods to add, when people post on Reddit saying, I want to add mods to my game, what should I add? This is almost always the first one that people name, and it is Squeak Through. Squeak Through by Super Cheese. It is one of the better mods that some people don't like it, but for most of us, it is one of the better mods that's ever been made. It's still on the top downloaded page of all downloads of Factorio mods, and it lets you walk in between buildings. For those that haven't played Factorio or played with this mod, essentially if you have a row of buildings, you normally wouldn't be able to walk through them. Or if you have a row of pipes, you wouldn't be able to walk through the pipes. You know, imagine like stepping over them or under them. You would just have to go around the whole line of pipes. But Squeak Through lets you walk in between them, lets you walk in between buildings, and it is super nice. It was made over 7 years ago, which is pretty close to the birth of Factorio mods themselves. And it has, 412,000 downloads. It's been around since Factorio version 0.13. And yeah, some purists say they don't like it. They like the challenge, you could say, about keeping your base walkable. To those people, I say phooey, and I will walk through my straight pipes. In all seriousness, though, as with most mods, it is one of those trade-offs. It does mitigate a design challenge. Designing your base to be more easily walkable or walked through, I would say, is a major challenge in certain games like Satisfactory because of the 3D space that you have to navigate. Actually designing your base in such a way that it's easy to travel through is quite important in Satisfactory. I think in Factorio, though, because of the top-down view, a lot of players feel more like it's an RTS, and they don't really want to be hampered by walking from one place to the other. So that's why Squeak Through is so popular, and people just want to be able to walk in between their buildings because they don't want to have to walk around a whole row of assemblers. Makes sense to me, but I get that some people don't like it. So with our first mod spotlight now completed, let's talk about this podcast. The Factory Must Grow. When I first originally thought about doing a podcast, I was a little curious about what the reception would be. But as I looked more into this genre, I realized there are no podcasts. Literally none. I Googled lots of different combinations of words, and I couldn't find a single podcast that had been done in this genre of gaming. And I was sitting here thinking, there's a podcast for everything. Surely there's a podcast for factory and automation gaming, because there's so many. It's such a new, well, not new, but it's such a growing and fast expanding category of gaming, with Satisfactory and Factorio and Dyson Sphere Program, Captain of Industry, all sorts of new mods for Minecraft even, Oxygen Not Included, Factory Town, Autonauts. Those are just to name a few. There's lots more that I've played and even more that I haven't. And I keep seeing new ones pop up on Steam that are clearly, you know, wanting to throw their hat in the ring of the factory/automation genre. So I couldn't really believe that there wasn't a podcast on this topic yet. So I thought, well, let's get one started, because this is a great topic. I know I've wanted to listen to one in my car, either on the drive to work or the grocery store or whatever. So I hope that you feel the same way, and that's why you're here. I know I have a passion for this genre. It's one of my favorite genres. It allows my brain to go into all the places it wants to go. It gives you those dopamine hits when your numbers go up, whatever the numbers are that you're producing. When they go up, it makes you happy. So yeah, I think the need exists for this podcast. I have the passion for it, and I have the desire to do it. And being an established content creator, I also feel like I had a little bit of a platform to get started into the podcasting world. As far as what the content will be in this show, it will revolve, I'd say 80 to 90% around the factory/automation gaming genre. I do want it to include a little bit of, real life talk because, well, we're all real humans and I'm a real human that's sitting here and talking about stuff. So, you'll get a little bit of my thoughts on all sorts of random things. And when I have co-hosts, when I have guests, I want them to feel like they can, talk about what they're branching off into. But more or less, it will stay relatively on topic. And we will go into lots of different games. We'll go into deep dives within those games and the mods within those games. So there's really no shortage of content that we have to explore. And I'm pretty excited to see what kind of space we can unlock in the factory automation gaming genre. As far as who I am, I'm in my 30s. I'm an avid gamer, always have been. I mean, I grew up on Jazz Jackrabbit and Command and Conquer and literally the original Mario game on the Super Nintendo. I mean, I've played a lot of games in my life. And as I got older, I majored in math education. I became a teacher of the high school math level and taught and tutored in various capacities for about 10 years now. I'm actually still math tutoring as a trade. And I'm also a content creator, which started about 4 years ago. I started a YouTube channel called Krydania as well, and really enjoyed being able to share my love for the game as well as being able to talk about the game while I play it, because I do feel like there's such a cool aspect of the automation genre that invites discussion. There are certain games where a lot of it is about getting better, like in Halo. You play and you're at a certain skill level, and really all there is to do is get better at the game. You can't really get different at the game. There's only one way. I shouldn't say that. I'm sorry. There are many ways you need to improve to get better in Halo, but you're not generally discussing things that are opinion based, right? Like some people are just better at aiming and they're going to win more. And some people are better at map positioning and they're going to win more. But when you play a game like Factorio, two players can play completely differently, and neither of them is going to quote unquote win more because there is no winning. It's a game all about progressing. And what does progress look like to you is such an interesting topic. And how do you like to progress? How quickly do you like to progress? What ways do you like to progress? It's all so personal. And that's why I think the factory automation gaming genre is so cool and such a cool space to talk about things, because there's so much personal aspect to it, and there's not just one right way to do it. Now, if your goal is a certain thing like killing more biters or, speed running to get under a 2-hour run, then yes, there are right ways to do those things. But those are only very specific goals. And what I love about sandbox games like Factorio is there are all kinds of goals that you can set for yourself and all sorts of ways to achieve them. So yeah, Tuplex was actually, back to myself, Tuplex was the one who inspired me to start streaming and recording YouTube content. I really enjoyed his Bob's Angels series. I had been binging it over the summer, and I thought to myself, I can do what he's doing. That looks really fun. I think I can do that. And I like the way that he's doing it. So Tuplex, if you're out there, hats off to you. You inspired another Factorio content creator, and maybe someday we'll be able to have him as a guest on the channel. That would be really awesome. I'm also part of a streaming group called Red Circuit, and Bold Viking was the one who drew me into that. You may know Bold Viking. He's a Factorio content creator as well as other games, but mostly Factorio and Pyanodons specifically within Factorio, which is an extremely hard mod pack. And I don't know how he still has a brain with how many hours he's dumped into Pyanodons. He has a base that melts my eyes when I look at it, and it's very impressive, and I hope one day to accomplish a base that large. But I also hope to have numerous Red Circuit members as guests on the channel, because a lot of them are also into this genre. Many of them have played either Satisfactory or Factorio quite a bit. So I hope those are going to be some guests. I also want to address maybe a little bit of a podcast elephant in the room. I don't have a co-host, and I actually think that's okay. I'm starting the podcast solo. I do believe it could be cool to have a co-host at some point. For now, I believe the search for a co-host wouldn't likely yield exactly the results I'm looking for, and it would delay the podcast from starting until I find the results I'm looking for, because I'm not really looking to settle for a co-host that I don't vibe with, right? We want to have good energy together, and maybe that person will present themselves in due time, and I'm definitely open to that. But for now, we'll fly solo with guests wherever we can. And I would like to get some guests on the podcast. So if you're listening to this and you think you could, I don't know, be a good guest on the podcast, please feel free to contact me and we can talk about what that would look like. And I will also be live streaming this podcast to Twitch. So if you'd like to engage in chatting with either other listeners or posing questions to me while I'm on air, feel free to follow Krydax on Twitch and you can join the discussion. There's also a Krydania Discord where you can post ideas for the podcast or questions that you have. So if you'd like me to talk about certain topics, then please join the Discord, throw it in the ideas and questions channel, and that'll be great. Now, even though I'm visually represented on Twitch, I'm not going to make it ever a channel where you would need to be watching, because it is a podcast. I expect that many of you are listening in your car or listening as you do the dishes or what have you. So I want to make sure that whatever happens, I'm always providing the visuals to you so that you don't need to see what's going on. There may be a few times where I pull up pictures or, text boxes of Factorio Friday Facts or things like that. But for the most part, you won't need to see what's going on, and I'll explain what's going on to those of you who are listening. Finally, I plan to upload to all of the major podcasting sites that I can figure out how to do so. I haven't necessarily ironed out all the kinks with that yet, but if the Factory Must Grow is not on the site that you'd like it to be on, just let me know and I'll see what I can do. And as far as anything else you want to know about me or the podcast, feel free to ask. Ask in the Discord, ask on Twitch, and I'll answer whatever questions I can. I think that's all I have to say about the intro to the podcast. I'm very excited about The Factory Must Grow, and I'm hoping that it grows, just like The Factory, because there's so much potential in this genre, and I think it's underserved. So I'm excited to talk with you guys. I'm excited to hear what all of you think about the genre and about what topics we can get into. But for now, we're going to dive into some Factorio Friday Facts. So for those of you on Twitch, please pose your questions and thoughts as well. I will be responding to some of those live, so please chime in. We're going to be talking about number 398 through 402, which is the last 5 weeks worth of Factorio Friday Facts, starting with Fulgora. Now, for those of you that haven't played Factorio, well, I'd be surprised if anyone's listening to this channel that hasn't played Factorio, let's be honest, but you might be. So Factorio is kind of the GOAT of the automation genre, and there is a large expansion coming soon to it. Expansion is almost not a big enough word for what's happening, because it's essentially, it's more than doubling the size of the game. Right now, Factorio has you as an engineer on a planet. There's 5 different ores that you can mine, and there's trees, and there's some enemies that you need to defend against, and you expand your factory, you get new technology, and eventually you launch a rocket, and that's it. And the expansion, called Space Age, is going to add 4 new planets, all of which individually I'd say seem about as fleshed out in terms of new mechanics and new resources as the base game itself. So to say that it's more than an expansion is quite fair. And they've been releasing every week new Factorio Friday Facts. And those are very exciting things for all of us who play the game, because every week they're just giving us new nuggets of reasons to be excited about the expansion. So that's what we're going to talk about a lot of weeks, is we're going to go over the most recent Friday Factorio Facts and discuss that. I think a podcast is a perfect place to discuss these developments, and as well as, you know, any other new game developments or new mod developments in the Factorio world and other automation game worlds. So let's start out with Fulgora. Fulgora is kind of the Mars substitute, as far as I can tell. I mean, you know, obviously it's their own planet. It's not literally Mars, but it's sandy, rocky, red, and it has storms on it, lightning storms in particular. So they shared that the what's the right word for it? The planet is covered in these old ruins. So I'm actually going to pull up a picture for the Twitch people here. And the planet's covered in these old ruins, and it's actually really cool because they're not they're not from the biters, and so it's evidence that there's some other race of aliens or whatever that used to exist on this planet, and we don't really know who they are, what they're about, but they left behind these ruins. And you actually, what was revealed in Factorio Facts 398, what was revealed is that you can mine the ruins. And so the scrap itself is actually like a mining, like a patch of iron ore. You can mine scrap. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take that scrap and put it in a recycler to get the base resources like cables and gears and circuits and steel. And I think that's actually a really cool mechanic, because those of you that have been following some of the other Factorio Friday Facts know that recycling is going to be a core component of the quality mechanic in Space Age. And the quality mechanic is all about upgrading your modules and buildings and things like inserters to a higher level. And you can upgrade them to a higher level, but only with a certain chance of success. And so the recycler allows you to recycle the ones that didn't get to the quality level that you want, which is kind of cool. That's what real factories do, right? You know, you make a bunch of gears, and the ones that aren't up to snuff, you melt them back down and make them into new gears. And so that concept of recycling the stuff that's not good enough fits real factory production pretty well. And I think it's kind of cool. And they're really leaning into that mechanic on Fulgora, because they're actually using the scrap as a necessary way to use the recycler. So even though it's not recycling stuff that you've made, it's recycling stuff that the previous inhabitants of the planet made. Another cool mechanic of Fulgora is that they're going to add lightning storms as a primary way to generate power. And it looks like there are these lightning towers that absorb the energy from lightning strikes. And I don't know how many, joules or watts they're going to add to your base and how much you'll need to collect, and if there's other ways to make power on Fulgora, but it does seem like these lightning strike collectors are the main way to get power at night, because there's not coal on the planet. We do know there's some form of oil that you can get. There's like an oil sand type. Almost like in Dune, there's more solid types of rocky areas that you can build on. And then there's like the oil sand oceans that are going to be really difficult to build on. And I don't even think you'll be able to landfill those sections until later game. So you're kind of forced to build on these islands of hard rocky patches. And it really reminds me of the old Dune games. I don't know if any of you played Dune 2000 or Dune 2. I'm trying to remember which one of those I played more, but I just remember it was like Command and Conquer, but you could only build on the rocky areas, and you couldn't build on the loose sand. And Fulgora is reminding me of that. You could only build on these rocky patches, so it's kind of like islands, even though there's no water. It does mention that there's infinite heavy oil, but you can't actually crack it with water because there's no surface water. And so you're going to have to get some ice from mining scrap, and then you can melt that down into water. And then you've only got so much water to go around to use in things like oil cracking or other things. I'm also curious if there's going to be any sort of space ice asteroid mining that you can then ship down to the planet. Potentially shipping water around is going to be a challenge in the game. I'm not really sure. So yeah, Twitch chat, let me know what you guys think about Fulgora and what your thoughts are on the planet. There's also an electromagnetic plant, and that's one of the new things in Fulgora. And it is a new way to make circuits. Super cool. They show a GIF on the web page, and it's got these cool things spinning around like a central wire spinner. It's like a spool of wire like threading around a thing in the middle. It kind of looks like a rotor almost, or what are they called? Stators? I don't remember the difference between rotors and stators, but it's the one with the wire wrapped all around it. But they show the picture, and it's plastic and copper cable and green circuits going into the machine and red circuits coming out. So you might think to yourself, well, that's the same as what an assembler does. It just makes red circuits. But then they mention it's a 4x4 machine with a crafting speed of 2 and a built-in productivity bonus of 50%, which is a lot, and 5 module slots, which is one more than an assembler tier 3 gets. So it's way faster, way more productive, and also has more module slots, which can make it even more productive or faster, which makes a huge difference for things like red circuits and blue circuits, which are historically one of the more expensive things you need to make in Factorio. And I think those are really going to help with all the modules you need to make as you're trying to get quality. Like when you're trying to get quality level 5, the legendary quality, we'll see if they actually go with legendary and rare and stuff like that or not. But the legendary quality modules are going to be really difficult to get. I think someone did the math, and you're going to need, oh shoot, I forget the number. If someone in Twitch chat knows, let me know, because I think it's in the thousands of modules you need to get to a legendary. And even if everything is legendary quality, to give you the new quality modules, it still takes an absurd number. But even to get to that point, it takes even longer, because quality modules only have a chance to make higher quality, and you need higher quality modules to have a higher chance at making higher quality. And so it's this funny like kind of loop that you start out really low on the totem pole, and you slowly work up one rung, and then you need to work up the other rung of having, the next tier of module, which requires more research, maybe going to another planet. It's really cool how they've done this. Anyway, we will be able to make the quality module 3s on Fulgora. That's where they get unlocked. I'm guessing all of the tier 3 modules are unlocked on various planets. My guess would be that speed module 3 is unlocked on one of the planets, and then productivity and efficiency is unlocked on the 3rd planet. Because there's kind of 3 middle planets and then a final planet that you can't really go to till you've done the middle 3. It's also possible that they combine speed with efficiency, because those two tend to go together in beacons to keep buildings from costing too much power, if power is an issue. I'm also curious, Twitch chat, what you guys think about the normal versus uncommon versus rare and epic and legendary titles, because it's such an interesting, like, a lot of the Reddit has hated it and some of it hasn't. So yeah, another interesting thing Twitch chat mentioned is there's no water for steam or nuclear on Fulgora, so you're going to have to use other means of production. And because you don't have a ton of space, solar is not going to be easy to just paste everywhere because of those oil sand oceans. And about the me talking about the Dune RTS, it was Emperor Battle for Dune. Thank you for that clarification. There's a new furnace on Vulcanus. Yeah, we didn't talk about that. And there's a new circuit maker on Fulgora, as we are talking about. So what's going to be the building we get on the 3rd planet? It's actually a really interesting question. I think an assembler or a chemical plant would make the most sense, because the furnace essentially does many of the same functions, plus it can assemble some of the lower tier materials by itself. So the furnace that we get on Vulcanus can make things like gears and copper wires directly from molten metal, so it can cast straight to those. And so it's interesting because it's kind of doing a little bit of what the assembler does, and then all of what the smelter does. And now we get revealed the one on Fulgora is doing pretty much only what an assembler does, but for circuit type electronic type items. So I guess the question is it going to be something that mostly deals with fluids like a chemical plant, or could it be something that deals with like the higher tier items like low density structure? It could be some sort of combo assembler and chemical plant. So essentially an assembler that has more fluid inputs, and you can potentially select a solid and a fluid recipe. I could see them doing some sort of combo where you can actually have like two recipes going at once in the same like mega assembler. But it's bigger and faster and can hold more modules. That could be pretty cool. Yeah, time will tell. I'm trying to remember what the third planet is called. I want to say people have discovered the name of it, and it slipped my mind. Anyway, can't remember that. So yeah, Fulgora, gonna be pretty dope. Is there anything else Twitch has to say about Fulgora? Someone said they thought efficiency would be on Fulgora. Yeah, that is kind of interesting. You'd think efficiency would be on Fulgora because it's all about electricity, right? And making electricity from lightning and things like that. It's possible that it is, and they just haven't said it yet. So you never know. Oh, and on the topic of rarity or quality rarity, I don't know what we even call it. The different quality tiers. And what were the 5 again? I just said them. So it goes normal, uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary. Which, as many of you know, that is essentially World of Warcraft or Diablo or any RPG game in the last 10 years pretty much follows that progression. Heck, I don't know who originated it. Maybe it was D&D even. I'm not sure. But those have been around for a long time. And most games use them. So on that axis, it makes a lot of sense that they would use those because, well, that everybody understands. And they even colored it the same way. Uncommons are green, rares are blue, epics are purple, legendaries are orange. I'm pretty sure that was World of Warcraft coloring for a long time. Diablo rares were yellow, magics were blue, sets were green. So Diablo had a little bit of a different coloring scheme, but World of Warcraft followed the green, blue, purple, and then orange. And then, of course, they added more colors like yellow and red and other things later. But those basic tiers of uncommon, rare, epic, legendary, that really makes me think of World of Warcraft. And so, yeah, their argument for that is people understand it. They don't need to do extra research. They don't need to learn a new thing. They don't need to learn a new naming scheme to know that the orange one is the best one and it's legendary and legendary is the best one. A lot of suggestions on the Reddit have been for things like, we could have, mastercraft and quality and or not quality. Quality is the mechanic, but they say things like better or high quality or poor. And I think one thing I need to note is that having the first tier be any sort of negative connotation would be bad. You want the first tier to be the normal thing. And I understand that people have an argument for like in real life, your construction might start out not being of the best quality, and that makes some amount of lore sense, but I don't think it feels good to players to start out the game making stuff that's bad quality, right? That just doesn't feel good. So I don't think that's good game design. So starting at normal makes a lot of sense. In fact, not even having the word normal there, unless you're defining what quality it is, I think makes sense. So really you just have iron gear, right? That's the base level. But then going into uncommon, it's just, what does uncommon even mean? And in Twitch right now, some people are saying they like the naming scheme. Some people are saying it's worth following the conventions. If it is similar to an MMO, legendaries should be end game because legendaries should be really hard to get. I do think that is hard in Factorio because eventually you're going to have all legendaries. And it's going to take a lot of work to get there, but you can get there. Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to get legendaries before Fulgora, if I'm reading what they're saying correctly. They say quality modules Here's what they say. Quality modules, adding more quality to new quality modules. So around and around we go in a wonderful quality carousel that ends with some very powerful machines. So I'm not sure when you unlock legendary itself. I think it's actually from a research that you unlock legendaries. So my thoughts on it, I actually came up with a proposal for what they could rename the tiers that I do think is pretty good because it doesn't include confusion. Most of the I can't talk today. Most of the suggestions that people have had online that I've seen, there's a little bit of confusion on which tier is the best, right? Because if you're saying like, oh, that's good and that's great. I've seen some that include the word good, some that include great. And when you're looking in from the side and you just see that it's a great quality module, you don't really know where that fits in the hierarchy. You know great is better than good if you saw them next to each other, but you shouldn't have to see them next to each other to know where they fit in the hierarchy. Legendary, you see that and you're like, oh, that's at the top. You see rare and you know that that's definitely pretty high up there. It's not just the second tier. Like you can guesstimate that rare is in the middle without having to know even what the other tiers are called. And that's one of the beauties of the MMO WoW style version. RimWorld, someone's saying in Twitch chat how RimWorld does it, and I want to say that's pretty similar to Dwarf Fortress, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be off on that. But RimWorld has awful, poor, normal, good, excellent, masterwork in Legendary. And so if we were to remove the first two, and then normal, like we said, is just the base level, so you don't really have it on there. So it would start as just an iron gear, then you'd have a good iron gear, an excellent iron gear, masterwork, iron gear, and legendary. I don't love that because masterwork and legendary are confusing. That comes back to the thing I said. To someone that isn't familiar with the game's nomenclature, I'm not actually sure which is better. If I just see masterwork, that kind of sounds like the best thing I could ever get. It's masterwork. Like, it's master. You know, and so masterwork and legendary feel a little bit interchangeable. So I don't know if that's great. Good and excellent feel like a pretty good distinction. You know, it's pretty clear that excellent is better than good. It's pretty clear that excellent is probably 2 steps up from normal rather than just 1 step up. I need to find, I'm trying to remember, it's been too long since I've actually talked about this. I don't remember what my own suggestions were, which is funny. I know I put them in my Discord somewhere. I wonder if I can find them real quick. What was my suggestion? Let's see if I can find it. So I had said, where was my suggestion? I said perfect is nice because it implies perfection and it's very clearly the best. So yeah, I do think perfect instead of legendary is a decent change because it's more clear that that's the best one. Let's see if I can find it. Oh yeah, one other thing that was pointed out on Reddit that I think was interesting is that common and uncommon are measures of rarity, and epic and legendary are measures of quality. And I do think that's actually some inconsistency. It's like, oh, uncommon, rare, and then you'd think it'd go hyper rare or, you know, extremely rare, but it goes epic. And so it's defining a different aspect of the item. A lot of people don't even really consider that anymore because, again, it's a World of Warcraft thing. Everybody knows what these words mean, so they're not really like thinking about it. So it looks like my suggestion was standard, good, superb, masterwork, and perfect. So that was one idea. And standard would be the normal, you know, you're not measuring, or you're not putting that, it's not called a standard iron gear, it's just called an iron gear. I like the word standard better than normal because it makes you think more factory-esque. like it's a standard iron gear. You know, it's our bog standard iron gear that we make in this factory rather than a normal gear. That doesn't feel like a very factory production line word. Good feels pretty basic. It's like, oh, that's a good iron gear. Like that's the one that we make for the people who want to pay more money, you know. And then a superb iron gear, masterwork, is clearly better than superb. You know, it's masterwork. And then again, perfect fits with masterwork pretty well because perfect is obviously the best. Perfect is a pretty clear worded English that is 100%. There's nothing better than perfect. So that's kind of some basic thoughts on what I had. Masterwork does kind of go against automated mass production. That's a good point, because masterwork kind of implies a specific, like almost like a handcrafted, artisanal, you know, feel to it, where it's like the factory's just pumping out these things, you know, 500 a minute or whatever. So yeah, it's hard to get this right. Honestly, they're in a tough space. I don't really know, honestly, if they should change it or not. I'm a little bit undecided myself. I don't love epic and legendary. I'm not gonna lie. I don't mind uncommon and rare. Epic and legendary just feel weird. Legendary steel chest, like, are you kidding me? That just doesn't sound right. It sounds very wrong to me. Legendary also feels like something you have to struggle to find. In most RPGs, you cannot craft legendary items. You can only find them. You have to go on raids or kill this hard boss to find legendary gear. Sometimes you find legendary blueprints to craft your own legendaries or whatever, but even those are hard to find. So legendary feels like this thing you have to go on a quest to get. The quest for the legendary grail, you know what I mean? And so I think to some level, legendary feels very out of place. Epic fits a little bit better. I still think it feels out of place. The other two are fine. Uncommon and rare, I don't have a core issue with those. It is a measure of, you know, rarity rather than quality, and I think it could be cool to have all 4 words the same. They could also just come up with 4 new words and make up their own system, and then it is kind of part of the game is just to learn what they're called. And I don't necessarily think that would be bad either, but Factorio is pretty good at trying to be approachable to new players, so I can see why they're sticking with this time-tested and time-proven approach. It'll probably take more time to get legendary gear in Factorio than in Diablo, says Twitch. I agree with that, for sure. Someone on Twitch is saying they did mention they're going to rename them. Oh, that is news to me. I'd love to see the sauce for that, because I hadn't heard that yet. That's actually really cool. Anyway, I am going to move on from Fulgora and talk about a couple of the more recent Factorio Friday Facts now. And I know that we've actually been talking about quality instead of Fulgora for the last 10 minutes, because quality is such an interesting mechanic and very controversial on what it's named as well, clearly. So Factorio Friday Facts 400 was about search and pins. What's really cool is that searching for buildings in Factorio is difficult right now. There's no way to find the section of your factory that's making iron gears except hunting around on the map and hoping you see the little iron gear icon. Right now you can show on the map the icon of what assemblers are making, but you can't actually like type the word iron gear anywhere and find the buildings. There is a mod for that, Factory Search, highly recommend it, pretty cool. But without a mod right now, there's no way to do it. And they're finally adding that into the base Factorio game. You can search for the word iron gear and it'll show you all your iron gear makers. It's wonderful. You can also hit a pin button and it will essentially pin that location to your map, and it'll show a little arrow kind of as you're walking, so you can basically search iron gears, go into map mode, type in iron gear, it'll find them as you're typing, and then you hit the pin button, close the map, and now you can just walk towards the arrow. So it's a super streamlined way to get to the section of your factory you're trying to get to, especially when you have a big factory. It's pretty obvious why they've added a lot of these quality of life features is that we're going to need them, right? In the vanilla Factorio, unless you're building a mega base, it's not really hard to remember where your iron gears are. There's only a few dozen items in the vanilla game as is. In a modded game, that's very different. But in the base vanilla game, search wasn't something that was super necessary. And they also added map tags a long time ago. So you can put map tags where you need them and stuff. But now you've got 5 different planets, which means 5 different surfaces to worry about. You've also got all of your space platforms and however many those are to worry about. And so being able to search for something is pretty important at that point, because you might not remember, wait, am I even making gears on this planet, or am I making gears on a different planet? So you might even not be looking at the right planet when you're trying to find your iron gear factory. So it's pretty handy to have a search function, and I think I think it was pretty necessary. One other thing that Twitch is mentioning is another important thing that hopefully we can search for. I don't think they mentioned it, is where do we use this item? So not only searching for iron gears, but searching for iron gears as an ingredient. Where am I using these iron gears? I think that's actually pretty helpful too, and I'm hoping that that can be a functionality that the search function has. Because otherwise, you're only getting half the equation, right? Items are both produced and used. Those are the only two. I guess you can store them as kind of a third. So really, like, where is it stored, where is it used, and where is it made are the 3 questions you might have about an item. The third is, where's the train? Yeah, actually, it's interesting. Like, if you have a train that only carries iron, it's a little tricky, though, because if the train is carrying something other than iron, how would you... Is it an iron train? Is it something else? So I'm not sure if searching trains will be a part of that functionality or not. I guess we'll find out. The next Factorio Friday Facts was 401, which is all about improved Nauvis. God, I still haven't decided how I say the name of this planet. I really wish they had an official pronunciation guide, like on their website or something, because to this day, I'm still not sure how you're supposed to say it. Is it Nauvis? Is it Navi? Is it novice? Is how some people say it, because like, oh, look, we're a novice engineer. Ha ha ha. It's funny. I'm going to go with Nauvis, and I'm going to go with that. We'll see how many people, send me angry DMs and letters. But now this terrain has not been touched for a long time, and one of the main improvements that Arendelle made is, well, first of all, he added a few things back in that apparently weren't ever spawning, because the code that causes them to spawn was like never returning true, essentially. It's more complicated than that, of course, but that was the essence of what was happening. And so there was some code that essentially said, hey, this thing, spawn it, but then the time where it got spawned never showed up. So we've got a few new trees and decoratives and stuff, but essentially what he really wanted to do was make cliffs and water not be as terrible, because right now water is kind of random. There's lakes all over the place. There's not really too much of a rhyme or reason. There's no rivers. There's no discernible kind of pathway along the water. And the same is true with cliffs. Previously, cliffs were tied to elevation, which meant that cliffs were often spawned in circles kind of around the water, which made cliffs pretty useless as a defensive position, since water is already defending from that direction, so the cliffs aren't helping. And it also made traveling along cliffs kind of pointless, because you have to travel along the water anyway. So often cliffs and water were blocking the same paths. And so they were both not very useful and not very helpful, or not very hindering at the same time. So what Arendelle has tried to do is rewrite all of it so that there are kind of these natural pathways through the game world. And the result, if you scroll down, it's a pretty long page because there's a lot of pictures, which is really cool. But the result is really cool because it turns the cliffs into canyons in a lot of places. So rather than having these random cliff walls that are stopping your progress, you have these canyons that you can travel through. And then he combined that with the tree spawning algorithm. So trees aren't just randomly spawning a forest in the middle of that canyon that you want to drive through. And there are also some rivers, and they do the same thing. So it's really cool because now you're going to be able to hop in your car and you'll actually be able to drive somewhere, not necessarily in a straight line, but you're not going to randomly hit, okay, well, oh God, I hit a cliff, so now I need to drive around the cliff, but oh no, there's a forest in the way of that, and then, oh, there's water up here, so I got to go around the other way. Now you're going to be able to actually travel fairly unobstructed in the general direction you're going to want to go. And I think the terrain also looks a lot more realistic. Having these canyons is really cool. It's surprising how good it looks. It almost makes me want to play with cliffs. And any of you who have watched my Factorio gaming know that I generally hate cliffs. But these look so good, I might just have to play with them. We'll find out. One other thing is biters. I'm not totally sure how biters are going to factor into this, but they'll probably spawn in sections that you want to drive through. So I assume biters are going to spawn in the way of your travels, and you'll have to kill them to get through. But yeah, canyons are going to be really good for defense, as someone on Twitch is saying, and I agree. You'll be able to put walls there and lasers there, and it actually makes a choke point that's useful, rather than previous cliffs, which often you had to defend on both sides of them anyway, so that they weren't helping to defend you along the line that your walls would be, which is really what you want. So pretty excited about that. Again, it's something I didn't even think of wanting. The Factorio devs are amazing. They keep adding things that I didn't even know I wanted. But I read these Friday Facts and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, please sign me up. I need that. How have I lived without this? And it feels like they've been doing this every week now for, I don't know, how many dozens of weeks they've been spoiling things for the expansion. So this game is truly next level. I cannot even begin to explain how amazing the Factorio devs are. They have set the bar for any devs who want to do a knock it out of the park job with their game. I think Woob has set the bar with Factorio. I don't know of any other games that have this level of optimization, focus on player experience and game design, as well as actually succeeding with the things they're attempting and doing it well, rather than saying, oh, we want a balance for player design, and then they do a crappy job and the game's not fun. I think Woob has knocked it out of the park. I will say Satisfactory has done an amazing job too, and they have one leg up on Woob for sure, which is the community managers and their YouTube presence. Not to say that you have to do this. Obviously, like, there are different approaches to game development. Woob has done amazing. I don't think they need community factory manager. I don't think they need a community manager to be successful. Obviously, they haven't. However, Satisfactory has had an awesome presence in the community, super positive, super welcoming, and they've done a great job of communicating through their video logs. And I do think Satisfactory has taken a lot of pages out of the Woob handbook, and they're doing a really good job with that game. And on that note, 1.0 for Satisfactory is going to release later this year, and I'm very hyped about that. I'm sure we will talk a lot about Satisfactory after that comes out. Because, yeah, that game is done really well. And not everybody loves it because of the 3D element, and sometimes because of the exploration element that's semi-required to get the alternative recipes. Good news for those of you that haven't loved that, they have added in Satisfactory an option to turn off the requirement to explore for hard drives. So if you want all the alternative recipes, you can just research them with that new setting. I don't know if that's going to be added or has already been added, but I know it exists. Anything? Okay. So moving on to the final Factorio Friday Facts I want to talk about is 402, which was released on March 15th, just a few days ago. And that is Radar Transmission Network. Oh yeah, you know it. Another mod bites the dust. These Factorio Friday Facts just keep revealing things the base game is going to have that previously only mods could do. And now it is transmitting wire signals through the circuit network, or through radars. And so you can plug your red wire into a radar, and it essentially will turn all other radars into connected red wire like light poles, basically. And so you can create logic on one side of the map that then turns off an inserter on the other side of the map without having to have a connected power pole train all the way across those 2 kilometers. Super handy. I actually really, really like that. Without that, I don't know how you would do logic very easily. Honestly, I don't really know how it's not in the game already, because there are a lot of times where I want to do logic on one side of the map that affects something on the other side of the map, especially with trains. And so trains are going to be a primary use case for this because you're going to want to know how much iron do I have in my iron mining train stop. And then you want to maybe disable some other mining patch until you've run out on the first one, or enable it, or any combination of things. Now, they do note there's only one channel. So if you have a red wire attached to a radar, that red wire applies everywhere. Every radar, at least on the map, is going to have the same red channel. What they haven't talked about is how to connect different surfaces. I'm sure there will be a way, but it's not this way, because they specifically say there's a lot of ways to do it. We wanted to keep it simple, so we decided that there's just a single radar channel for each surface, still separated between red and green. So what that means is your red channel on Fulgora will be separate from your red channel on Nauvis. What they don't explain is how do you get one of those red channels to the other planet. I'm sure there will be a way to do it. It's probably a different building. Finally, they do mention red and green specifically. They say nothing about blue wire. However, I'm still secretly hoping that they add blue wire because, if there's anything about this mod, it's that we're going to have more opportunities to use combinators because of all the new logic and recycling and quality and all sorts of new things, the new train network stuff, all kinds of updates to Factorio. And I'm hoping we have blue wire because 2 channels has not quite been enough. Sometimes red and green wire eventually can run out. It is surprising, though, it's pretty rare that red and green cause me to run into limitations. Sometimes I just want a blue wire for visual aid, even if I didn't technically need blue wire. So for my part, I would actually like a third color of wire just so that I can more visually discriminate between what's hooked up to what in my circuit builds. I also think because they are removing wires from being a crafted item, there's a higher chance they add blue wire, because they might have not wanted to add it because it's like, well, it's just another item in the game. There's a lot of downsides. And now that's not there because one of the other things they spoiled is that wires are not actually items in your inventory. You can connect, 2 different combinators or an inserter to a belt and all that sort of thing with a red wire without having to actually have a crafted red wire in your inventory. So that's pretty cool. They also added this cool little functionality. It's very specific, but when you cut and paste combinators and move them, the wires that were previously hooked up stay hooked up to the same places, which is pretty cool. Right now I use the Picker Dollies mod, which allows you to slide buildings around on the floor or on the ground, whatever you want to call it. And that also maintains wire connections, but the new vanilla functionality is that you'll be able to cut and paste combinators around and all their connections will stay the same. So you can kind of, the reason this is nice is you can build your combinator setup pretty spread out, where everything is more clear where it's hooked up and what it's hooked up to. And then once you've figured out all the logic and it's correct, you can cut and paste it all to be this dense little cube of wires and combinators that, you basically have to write down what it does because you'll never find out again. It's like trying to look at the code that you wrote last year. Who knows what it does? One other random thing that they announced in this Factorio Friday Facts, which is actually really funny. It's been a bug that's been in the game for, I don't know, years. I mean, since I can remember. Since Bob's Mods has existed, at least, because what the bug is if you craft more than one recipe every tick. And so if you don't know, the game runs 60 ticks per second, and if you were to have a crafting speed of, let's say, 60, or let's say 120, and you're crafting, let's just say something basic, like a iron gear out of an iron plate. If you're doing 100 recipes per second, well, the building would actually be limited to only 60 recipes per second. It cannot produce more than 1 per second. So it would actually end up just making 60 gears per second, if you could unload all of them, that is. But if you had productivity in that building, and let's just for argument's sake say you had some boosted productivity modules and you had 100% productivity. Well, normally, if it was running at 60 speed, then you would get 60 gears from the regular crafting and exactly 60 gears from the productivity. And if you were to go to 120 times speed, you would get 120 gears and 120 from the productivity. But the problem is the limit was one actual recipe per tick. So it would only create 60 recipes worth of gears, which is 60. But the productivity is unlimited. And somehow the productivity wasn't limited to one per tick. And so what would happen is you would end up getting 120 bonus gears and only 60 of the normal, meaning you got 180 gears for the price of 60. And that's actually triple productivity. So it was this weird bug that only showed up with super modded buildings where if they went really, really, really fast, the productivity would actually kind of give you more than you were supposed to get, is the essence. And now they fixed it so that it actually produces the right amount. It can produce more than one per tick. You do need some crazy stack inserters. And I'm talking about the new stack inserters that actually stack items on belts, which is so cool. You need stack inserters to get that number of items out of a building, but they have a little GIF that they show, which is pretty cool. And it talks about a legendary foundry crafting at plus 2,500% speed. So, oh yeah, and someone on Twitch mentions there's also infinite productivity on miners, and there's the new big miners, which mine even faster, plus new quality, which can make things faster, plus quality speed modules, which can make things faster. So there's a lot of new axes on which things can get faster. So they had to handle this in the base game. So they spent like 7 years telling everyone to go pound sand down a hole, like, if you're going to have crazy crafting speeds, whatever, you can deal with the bug. And now they're like, okay, fine, we have to fix it, I guess, because now in our base game, we're dealing with it. So I think that's actually kind of funny. They did admit, what did they, I think they phrased it as eating crow. Yeah. Then Space Age happened with its legendary speed modules, and all of a sudden it's a base game problem, and it was time for me to eat crow and find a solution. So I'm glad that they kind of owned up to to not wanting to fix that for a long time. But yeah, those are the past 5 Factorio Friday Facts, at least the main points. And you can expect us to keep caught up with these in the coming podcasts. And I think that's about all I've got for episode 1 of The Factory Must Grow. It's been a great time getting to know you guys, and I hope to see you in future weeks. And with that, we will all remember the factory must grow.